Hey guys, so in this video, I will be discussing the war on drugs and 6 reasons the United States would greatly benefit from legalizing recreational drug use. So drug use is harmful for individual health, for families, and for society as a whole. And so this is the reason why in 1971, the United States government launched a campaign to crack down on the production, distribution, and use of several drugs. And though these policies have had some benefit, the harm of these policies far outweighs any good that has been done. The war on drugs has destroyed hundreds of thousands, if not millions of lives. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the specific reasons we should legalize drug use and alternative policies that we can enact to lessen the effects of drugs in our society. The first reason to legalize drugs is that banning them incentivizes criminal activity. The black market causes a rise in drug prices, and many drug users end up turning to crime in order to pay for their drug habits. It also leads to a rise in gangs and cartels that are seeking money opportunities. And the problem with the illegal drug trade is that if there's a dispute of payment or if there's another gang encroaching on their territory, there's no legal system to deal with it, and so many gangs use gun violence in order to protect their business. And much of the gun violence in the US would actually be prevented if we ended the war on drugs. Drug bans not only fuel violence in the United States, but they also fuel violence in Latin America. Since the United States is such a big market for cartels, it has caused a rise in cartel activity in many Latin American countries, and as a result, many people have fled their homes due to violence that they've experienced. It's led to a lot of deaths, and so one of the best things we could do to curb the immigration crisis that we've been experiencing at the border in the last few decades is to end drug bans. It would be the best thing for the United States and Latin America in the long run. So another reason to legalize drugs is that many of the illegal drugs are actually considered more safe than legal drugs such as alcohol and tobacco. A whole list of drugs such as ecstasy, marijuana, heroin, cocaine, all of these drugs are considered by scientists to be more safe than alcohol and tobacco. I mean, we all know that alcohol and tobacco have horrible health effects, and there's been many deaths that have resulted from alcohol. And so we should reevaluate our laws, because scientists have agreed that many of our laws have more historical and cultural reasons than scientific. And it's not fair to lock someone up for drugs that don't have any scientific basis for being banned. Just another note I wanted to make, that when drugs are legal and they are regulated by the federal government, they're actually less potent than they are when they are in the black market. And we saw this during the Prohibition era, that a lot of alcohol was more potent and dangerous when it was made illegal. So the third reason to legalize drugs is that banning drugs violates our personal freedoms and bodily autonomy. There's obvious times in which drug use should not be legal, such as if you're driving a motor vehicle, if you're around minors, you don't want them to be exposed to that, or if you're in a public area and drug use could be a hazard to other people. But if your drug use is not harming other people, it should be your own personal choice. I'm personally an advocate of a drug-free society, and I think drug use is terrible for people. But I think that is a better use of our time to advocate it through social means rather than by enforcing a ban on other people. The fourth reason to legalize drugs is that our drug policies actually harm addicts, and it worsens addiction. There's obviously people who are violent drug offenders that should be incarcerated, but for non-violent drug offenders, instead of sending them to jail, we should actually offer them help. There's evidence that suggests that sending someone to jail actually leads to feelings of depression, isolation, and makes them more likely to relapse after they leave. There's very little help for people who've gotten out of prison, and because they have a record, they can't get housing or jobs, and because their life isn't going anywhere, they end up turning back to drugs. And so instead of jailing them, for nonviolent drug offenders, we should actually offer them drug addiction programs and help them get back on their feet, and that'll make it less likely that they will turn to drug use. The fifth reason to legalize drugs is the United States has spent billions of dollars on the war on drugs. In the past 50 years, they've spent over $1 trillion, but drug use continues to rise. In 2019, the United States had 550,000 marijuana-related arrests, and that's actually more than the arrests for all violent crimes combined in the same year. The best thing we could do is divert that money towards stopping violent crime and toward addiction recovery programs. In addition to that, we could also raise money through tax revenue by legalizing marijuana. So the final reason to legalize drugs is that the United States drug policies have led to a lot of police abuse and violations of our civil liberties. Obviously, when you have any policy and any interactions with the police, there's potential for abuse. But in this case, it's actually caused far more harm than good. If you go online, there's a ton of videos of police raids gone wrong, or times where police knock on the wrong door, or there's no-knock drug raids where people end up getting shot and killed who are innocent. I mean, there's other examples of this in other policies, like the war on terror. Though we've had good intentions, a lot of times we have resulted in a loss of civil liberties, like the mass surveillance that we've had happening since 9/11. And this doesn't mean that we need to not have any drug enforcement, but it means that we need to rethink our approach. So to end this video, I just wanted to talk about possible concerns about the consequences of legalizing drugs. I know that there are people that are concerned about drug use being rampant and people using drugs in public and drugs being sold on every street corner, and for people being bombarded with advertising for hardcore drugs. And I think those are valid concerns. I actually agree with many of those concerns, because I don't want to live in a world where drug use is being advertised everywhere and where our children are being exposed to these messages. And so I think there's many things that we can do to mitigate this. First of all, I think for drugs that are less dangerous and they're on the lower scale, I think that we should strictly regulate where they're allowed to be sold and the advertising that's being allowed, who it's being directed toward, and in what situations we will allow advertising. And for more dangerous drugs, I think that we should ban advertising outright. And for some of these drugs, we'll still criminalize distribution, but we'll legalize the use. And I think that we shouldn't have a one-size-fits-all policy. This subject is far more complicated than I am even describing in this video. And we'll really need to look at research, because in some cases, for more hardcore drugs, legalizing them may actually do more harm than good. And so we will need to look at each drug on an individual basis, look at the research, and see how we can balance safety with freedom. For me personally, I think drug use is harmful, and I think that on a societal level, we should promote a drug-free lifestyle. But I think that it'll be a more productive use of our legal system and of our tax dollars if we work toward a legalization. And so this is all I wanted to say on this video. I'd love to hear your comments and see what you think. I will see you guys in the next video.